Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today, I'm joined with Joe Barth, an old friend, an old baseball friend, better known as the Hit Doctor, founder of the Hit Doctor Academy in New Jersey and Tri-State Arsenal. Joe, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dan. I appreciate it.
No problem. I got an email from you. Kind of got lost in my old email box before it was forwarded off to me. So I was really glad to get that email and kind of connect again. Man, I couldn't even think back to when you and I first started competing against each other, and you guys coming to our tournaments. But man, it had to have been in the early 2000s for sure.
No, it was before that. Yeah, absolutely.
So
when you started, we started.
Yeah. So, two of the kind of trailblazers when it comes to travel baseball and that sort of stuff. And, here we are. I've kind of turned a new chapter, traveling around the country and connecting with some of my old players. And you just overcame some health issues in 2020, but are still looking to get out there on the baseball field and keep coaching kids. So I guess, first of all, I mean, what was it that, made you want to get into coaching in the first place? And again, I mean, you are an icon when it comes to, youth baseball and travel baseball. I mean, the old country song that goes, I was country before country wasn't cool. Well, you were definitely travel baseball before travel baseball was cool. And I guess I was as well. But, what was it, that, let's go back to the beginning. What is it that stemmed the start of, Tri-State Arsenal and the start of the Hit Doctor Academy?
Well, I started the academy in 1988, and I coached Clouser Catholic and Brookline Legion for close to 25 years. And after I started the academy, I was trying to help, hitters and pitchers from South Jersey, because like Pennsylvania, Jersey, we always had trouble getting our kids college scholarships. When they signed, they didn't get a fair shake. My dad started Legion in 1950 with Brookline, and then I was the successor. But after a while, the Hit Doctor really took off for instruction, because there was no such thing when I started. And then after a while, I started losing some of my top students to travel ball. And they said, well, we're going to Mr. Johnson's garage and he's training us. And so I actually got in by accident. Somebody was on a travel team that never won anything. And I was sick, and they called my son. They said, would the Hit Doctor like to coach our 15-year-old team? And I said, or my son said, yeah, we would like to coach it, meaning the academy, because I was sick.
Right.
And the next day in the paper, I picked it up that I was coaching a 15-year-old team. And we got lucky. We went to the, ECTB stuff at the time, and we went to the AAU World Series and beat East Cobb and a couple teams. East Cobb had won 15 straight national championships, and we got lucky to beat them 5-4. And after that, all heck broke loose over my, 25, 30 years in travel ball. Now it's gone from, the best players playing on a few teams to there's travel teams everywhere. There was 3 in the Delaware Valley when I started, and now there's 600. So it's grown like crazy. It's killed Little League, Babe Ruth, and Legion. My brother and I still sponsor the Brookline Legion team. He coaches it, but it's not, Legion ball isn't as strong as it used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, before we hit record, I mean, it was kind of a double-edged sword, with what we were doing at Berkshire and, what you were doing at Arsenal. But I think we were trying to do it the right way, and enhance some of those programs, but it has gotten,
Absolutely.
So watered down. I mean, I know the first couple of years that we ever started running tournaments, we might only had 6 or 8 teams in a tournament, but man, I'll tell you what, those 6 or 8 teams all could play.
They were good.
Yeah. Yep. Now, toward the end of my tenure, we'd have 68 teams at a tournament, and you couldn't find six that had the quality that we had. And, I hate to, sound like those old guys, who talk about, hey, when I went to school, I had to, walk uphill both ways in 6 inches of snow. But, the game has changed so much. And, I mean, you have, coached some really, really good players. And, do you think today, there would be another guy, like, let's just say like a Mike Trout that would come through your organization? Because we would have kids that played in our organization, from the time they were 12 years old till the time they graduated high school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I,
You know,
we have a few kids like that, but it's not like it used to be. Like every kid played for us because we practiced all the time,
right,
and we played games during the week, but we went to the tournaments on the weekend, and we played or practiced 6 days a week. And they gave up the shore, they gave up the cars a lot of times, and because they wanted to become better players. I I I see my brother's high school team and Brooklyn Legion all the time, and I see my Arsenal USA teams, and they couldn't play with our teams, not because they don't have the talent, but because they don't practice enough.
right,
They're not polished enough. And the reason my father got into it, and then me, I played at Rider College when we were going to the College World Series all the time and competing with Arizona State and USC. And I played against a lot of the major league guys, and I'd come back to New Jersey, and none of the guys on our team got drafted hardly. And I thought this isn't fair. And after Perfect Game come along and started having these tournaments, and we entered them even up with teams from California and Florida, we more than held our own. And a lot of the kids, including Doolittle and Trout, we had 17 guys in the big leagues last year. They've proven that they were missing talent for 50 years on the East Coast.
yeah,
Talent is everywhere. Polish was easier to get in California and Florida, but the guys that have great talent, they're evenly distributed pretty much. So now our kids get a better chance of playing pro ball, and they get better chances to get scholarships, but they're not polished like the travel teams you and I had. I remember when Trouty went up to Berkshire, we had I had two teams at 15, and his dad helped me with one, and a guy named Bob Bresco that played for the Yankees helped me with the other. And one tournament we actually came in first and second, but we had a tough game every single game up there. And I was the coach of both teams, and Mr. Trout, he coached the other team that Michael wasn't on, same with Mr. Bresco. And they were coaching for the right reasons to help all the kids. And they never really worked with their own kid as long as they were with us. They were two of the best coaches I ever had. And that was still our favorite tournament all the time. As things changed, now everybody wants to go 50 different places, and they got a little spoiled playing so many places. But I can't get over how much money, like some of these academies now are charging $4,000 or $5,000 a year.
yeah,
And we never charged anywhere near that kind of money. I
yeah.
was doing it, for fun or try to help kids. But anyway, it's changed a lot.
And I think that speaks volumes when you mention that, Mike Trout's dad didn't actually coach him in your organization. And I mean, that's what it's all about today is, daddy ball is just, make,
Absolutely.
and,
Absolutely.
one of my old coaches, we still talk often, and he would always say, he goes, you can always tell the names on the back of the shirts of the 3, 4, and 5 hitters were the names in the back of the shirts of the 3 coaches in the dugouts. And it's so true, like we would joke
Absolutely.
about it, but it was so true. And
Well,
to hear you say that Mike
it
Trout's
is.
dad coached in your organization while his kid was playing for another team in your organization is just so refreshing. And, um, I think that, kudos to his dad for knowing that actually he was probably doing more good by not being in the dugout of Mike's games than, being in the dugout. And if just one parent listens to that and takes that for heed, I think our
They,
podcast
yeah,
accomplished a lot.
him and his wife and Michael were probably one of the greatest families I ever had the pleasure to coach. Not because he was necessarily just a great player. He's an even greater person, but I don't want to give Jeff too much credit. But Jeff Trout was a great, great ball player. He should have been a major leaguer. He was dominating AAA and couldn't get away from Robbie Alomar. But he worked for me for maybe 8 years doing things. And when he was 12, Michael so dominated Little League that he decided to bring him up to Arsenal. And his wife, Debbie, said he was so tough on him. And that was funny because all the players he ever worked with, he was never tough on them. So
Yeah.
the deal was later on, he helped coach Thompson and myself and my brother to coach Michael's team. But he would go from coaching first base to sitting with his wife in the lawn chair rather than come in the dugout so that he didn't yell at his kid, because he's the only kid he ever yelled at. And he did it once and that was it. Never said a word again because we relegated him to the chair. But Mike Trout is one of the hardest working, most generous kids that we ever had. And it was just ironic that his parents were the most positive people. They cheered for everybody. Debbie was the team mom for years. She took care of everybody. It didn't hurt that her husband played pro ball. She knew what everybody should know, but she shared all her information. Jeff was a great coach, 3-time All-American at Delaware. And he would sit down with each kid and make a plan. And it was just such a pleasure to see him make it up. And I'd like to say that, I picked him up at Wawa and made him into what he is. But then someone would say, make me one. That kid was good from day one. And it was so cool to see him be what he is and his parents be rewarded for all the people that they helped, because they have helped a lot of people.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love what you said, because that was one of the things we would say as well as, we had a couple guys, that went on to play professionally. We only ever had one big leaguer, and he really only got a cup of coffee, Zach Lutz. So again, still not quite the pedigree that Arsenal had, but, we were still proud of the 40 kids that went on to play professionally. But, I always told people, I said, the thing is, all those guys that went on to play professionally, quite frankly, we did a lot less for them than we did for the kid, who was 5'0" who still ended up going on and playing 4 years Division III college baseball, because most of those other kids, I'm like, all we did is give them a jersey. We had a left-handed pitcher throwing 92 as a senior in high school. We didn't do that for him. God did that for him.
No,
God gave him a thunderbolt as a left arm, and we just tried to point him in the right direction.
Well, both of us, our goal was to try to get the boys to continue to play after high school and go to college. And that was our main concern. Pro ball, if God willing, that's fine. We were lucky we had a lot of really talented kids, but they didn't really start noticing them until we started. We had a couple guys snuck through the major leagues that didn't get signed for a lot of money. And then they started looking, and then other opportunities opened up for all the guys. But our main objective was to get them to play college baseball, maximize their talent, and go as far as they could. And when we played you guys, it was always a friendly battle, great environment, real baseball. But all the teams that went there were pretty darn good. You didn't have no easy games up there, where nowadays the kids change teams like Mexican jumping beans, and they never really get that polished. Like a lot of our kids go to college and start over kids that are nationally ranked by perfect game, but they just been floating around pitching 92, and then they get to a school with one of our kids who can pitch, and they get beat out. And that's what I tell our guys: don't worry about what you're ranked by anybody, just worry about winning. But it starts at the big leagues, carries all the way down. They want non-baseball guys to be able to scout. And so they try to give you numbers. And I don't know, Eddie Stanky, Pete Rose might not even get drafted nowadays.
Yeah.
Right. But they won all the time. And nobody's really teaching that. Still toughest thing for my kids is that little lefty that half the time can't break a pane of glass. It beats us all the time if we don't hit properly. And
right.
Same thing's going to happen now. They're winning in the big leagues because these guys, they're launch angle and they got midgets trying to hit it out of the park, and then little lefties continue to dominate. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I think the other thing that a lot of kids miss out on nowadays by, playing on a different team every weekend and multiple teams, and not being in an organization where you're practicing, 4, 5, 6 days a week and then, playing as well, is just that team component and that chemistry. And that's one of the things that, as I've been able to reconnect with some of these players, it's one of the things they all bring up is that, the friends we made as a team, by spending the amount of time together that we did, these guys are still friends with kids they played with in our organization,
Yeah.
15, 20 years later. And, there's a lot to be said about that I think today's player, in the travel ball atmosphere that exists today is missing. You can build some friendships and some camaraderie, by getting together and playing 3 or 4 games in a weekend, but man, not the same as spending
No, it's not.
30,
No,
35 games together,
No, it's not the same. And it's happening everywhere. And in other words, our mantra, which I inherited from my father and some of his coaches, but we tried to build a program on loyalty, integrity, and commitment.
Yep.
And that's a thing that carries out through life. But right now, there is no loyalty per se to your organization. They'll jump in the New York Minutes. There's not a lot of integrity between these coaches and the players and so forth. They'll tell you anything to get you to come there. And sometimes it's what they don't tell you that's no good. Why
Right.
isn't my son on the A team? Well, he's a great player, but we have another shortstop who's a great player, and he was here first, so we're going to put you on the B team. Instead of saying he's not good enough to be on the A team, he's better off being the shortstop on the B team
Right.
than a backup on the A team. That's the truth, but because of lack of integrity. But the thing that's really missing now is commitment to your team, your teammates, your school, your parents. Where's your commitment? There's plenty of commitment to your own individual development, but none to the team. And it's the same in corporate America. It's the same in politics right now, right? They're not committed to the United States. They're not committed to their corporation. They're committed to themselves moving upward, or becoming elected, instead of being a team player going for the better good. And so that's, baseball and sports teach a lot of life lessons. That's one of them. Loyalty, integrity, and commitment are harder and harder to find, and therefore they garner more of a paycheck. Eventually, if you can find someone that has those 3 qualities, we'll teach them the X's and O's of whatever it is.
Right.
But we want a quality person.
Yep.
And that's unfortunately being taught, if it ain't best for you, go somewhere else, instead of maybe pulling your teammates up and helping them get some success.
Yep.
But
yeah, and
I sound
that's
like a
one
dinosaur.
of the, no, but that's one of the things that we stressed all the time is,
Absolutely.
we were teaching life lessons, and it wasn't about, like I said, I forget the final count, before Berkshire went on and the organization technically doesn't exist anymore, but I think we were around 40, 42 players that went on to play professionally. I said, we were so proud of those guys. I said, but even more so is we're incredibly proud of the kids that went on to become doctors and lawyers and dentists and entrepreneurs, because that's really what it was all about. We knew
Absolutely.
the percentages of kids that were going to go on and play professionally was tiny. Um, and we were honest with people about that. And we were honest with people about the ability to get a college scholarship in baseball.
Yep.
And it was so frustrating to us to see some of these organizations come out and say, oh, come play for us, and we'll guarantee that you're going to go on and play Division I baseball. And I'm like, man, how can you say that to a right-handed kid that's throwing 83 miles an hour?
Can't, yep. That's a lack of integrity.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It's
yeah,
so prevalent nowadays.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was very, very frustrating for us and for me personally to to kind of deal with that. But by the same token, we also understood that what, the players that were meant to be in our organization were there, and they did make a commitment, and we did make a difference in their lives, both on and off the field. So that's one of the things why, I mean, anytime you and I would see each other or talk to each other, whether at a tournament or whether on the phone, um, we always had so much in common because we really understood the greater goal of what we were doing. I mean, I remember,
That's what it's all about.
still going down to see you at the Hit Doctor one time, and I think the original philosophy was I was going to go there and take a quick tour and have lunch with you and head back to Pennsylvania. I think till it was all said and done, we probably spent 6 or 7 hours together, just sitting
Yep.
around and talking baseball. We
Yep.
did have
Yep.
lunch as well, but and that's just the way it is when you come across like-minded people, and it's frustrating, to see how few there are out there. But boy, when you come across one that still understands it, it's really, really refreshing. And like I said, I mean, you've been doing it longer than I have. Um, so I can imagine the changes that you've seen even more so than what I had seen.
Well, we're trying. I'm trying to give back at this point. I'm too old to worry about winning or losing. I'm just trying to make kids better. But I used to have every kid had a book, and he had to do his goals, make a plan for his baseball career, keep a daily diary, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know which one of my guys it was talked me into doing an app last year, but now I give it for free to the coaches, and it's basically Hit Doctor Goal Book. Any coach that wants it can have it for free, but it allows you to enter your players and to check their books every day. And I'll be honest, my kids don't know it, but I didn't check their books every day. I'd spot check it. But if a guy didn't pick up a bat for a week, he got an email. And sometimes the kids mean well. I'm going to start working out next week,
Mm-hmm.
and or later, but later turns into a week, a month, several months, and pretty soon it's time to start high school practice. They haven't done anything all winter. So the minute we started the goal book, that helped us to keep track of our coaches, and our players had some semblance of accountability. Now we went a step further. We have testing in 21 to 27 physicalities or baseball skills every month, depending on what position you play. Outfielder have 21 tests. Shortstops and pitchers have 27. But if you set your goals and you work on them every month, you should see improvement in pretty much every area that you worked on that month. And the tests will correlate exactly with the amount of work you put in. And I had 3 kids when Trouty was 13. We won everything. We won a lot of national championships. But I had 3 kids who were pitchers, shortstops. He was one of them, and the other 2 kids were every bit as good as him. As the years passed, actually all 3 of them signed and played Division I, except Trouty. But they went on to play pro ball, the other 2 kids. But he worked 10 times harder than they did. And each year he got a little bit better than them. By the time they were 16, it was like, wow, he's one of the best in the country. And these 2 other kids are really good. But there was a huge gap between them. And he separated themselves because he kept doing the drills every day and kept track of it. And his father and I watched him. And his coach, Mike Thompson, had him for a couple of years. 4 seasons. He watched them all the time. And success leaves clues. You have to get your own system for success. Trout's is different than Doolittle's, which is different than Zach Gallen's. You got to find what makes you a great player. And the only way to do that is keep track of what you're doing all the time. And so that's one of the things we stress. But I retired. I got zapped a couple of times on the table. So evidently God had a plan for me. And what I'm trying to do now is give that any high school coach, college, any coach that wants to get that book to help monitor the kids, we'll do that. And I'll send them drills and stuff if they want to do it. But there's so many sources of information now. You can get the drills online. The thing is, are the kids doing them? And it's not that the kids don't want to do them. They think they don't have time to do them.
Right.
And so that as the coach just takes enough interest to look at their book and say, hey, when's the last time you picked up a ball? You should be long tossing by now. You should, whatever. So anyway, that thing's called baseballgoalbook.com. They can go on and get it for free. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's one of my contributions. Baseball gave me a lot of fun. And I made my living doing baseball for 30 years. So I never worked a day after I retired as an accountant.
Yeah. Well, so, and isn't it so important though, that the accountability aspect? And
absolutely.
I think that's one of the things that is missing today is that, we don't hold these kids accountable for their actions. And I think that's so important because, again, once you get into life and, at some point the game of baseball is going to pass us by. It doesn't matter how good we are. At some point, Mike Trout is going to stop playing baseball. And what he brings to the table as a human being at that point is what's going to be important. And, we stress that to our kids all the time is, baseball is a very unforgiving sport. When it's done with you, it's done with you. It doesn't ask questions.
Exactly.
And that day is going to come for every one of us. It can be, for some kids, it's at the end of their junior high season. For some kids, absolutely, it's at the end of high school, some college, and some it's, after a Hall of Fame, major league career, but it's going to pass you by. And, we tried to stress that to our kids so much that, there's still going to be a lot of life to live after you are done playing. And no matter what level you get to, somebody's going to be sitting across the table from you and is not going to care what you did on the baseball field. And I like to tell 2 stories. We had Bill Ripken come and speak at our banquet back in 2006, I believe it was. And I remember Billy saying that, talking about Cal Jr., he said, Cal's baseball career does not define him as a man. And, again, when you look at what the Ripkens have done, they don't have to be involved in youth baseball, but they are. And I think they're trying to do it the right way. They're trying to teach that integrity and loyalty and respect and all those things that you and I talk about.
Absolutely.
And the other story I like to tell people is when I first met Dickie Knowles, I was doing a baseball camp in Reading. And Dickie was up there to help with the camp. He was one of the staff members. And, I'm in my mid 30s, but I'm like any other, guy at that point where you still get starstruck. I was a big fan of the, 80 World Series team from the Phillies. I could name the entire starting lineup and all that sort of stuff. So it was really cool for me to, be working side by side with Dickie Knowles. And during that week, I had a phone conversation with my mom, and I'm telling her this story. And, I said, yeah, I'm working with Dickie Knowles. And she's like, oh, I know Dickie Knowles. And it just totally floored me because I'm like, what are you talking about? My mom lived in Florida at the time. And here her and Dickie would get together. My mom was a drug and alcohol counselor, and they would get together once a year at a conference in Clearwater. drug and alcohol counselor conference in Clearwater and have lunch and just exchange stories. And at the end of the day, my mom, she said to me, well, I do remember him saying something about him playing baseball at some point. So the fact that he was, at that time, one of 25 guys who had a Philadelphia Phillies World Series championship ring mattered absolutely zero to my mother. What mattered, to her is that he was a colleague in the same field as what she was in, who they could, share professional secrets about, with each other to make each other better and to help those that they were working with. So, again, doesn't matter where you get to, at some point, someone you meet isn't going to care what you did on the field. And I think, when you talk about guys like Mike Trout and talk about how he's a great player, but he's an even better man, that's so important. And kudos to you and his parents to instill that in him, because they always say it does take a village to raise these kids. So, it's not just the parents, it's parents having the foresight to get people like yourself involved in their kids' lives to, again, help have that influence on them. And that's another thing, nowadays, when you look at parents, I'm not sure that they're all convinced that it takes a village to raise their children. A lot of time it's, I want a village as long as that village agrees with everything I'm telling Johnny or Susie.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing. Getting the parents to understand that their responsibility is to do the best they can for them. Know when to back off. Maybe get some professional help when you're not a professional, but take him to get his reps, throw him the ball. My wife used to put my catcher's gear on, and she was a midget. She couldn't catch a ball. She just taped my catcher's mitt onto the chest protector and let my son ricochet balls off her all day until he threw too hard. But you, as a parent, you're just, the parents sometimes try to sacrifice the time with their kid by spending more money on him. Like if I spend $4,000 for him to play on this team, I've done my job. No, your job is to find out where your kid can learn more about baseball, better himself as a player and as a person, and encourage that by you giving him the reps maybe he doesn't get there all the time. Follow what the coach's instruction and throw to him or whatever. And if he chooses to play something else, you got to show interest in him. You know what I mean? That's now I have all girl. I have one boy and two girls, and I got all girls and granddaughters. So I've seen a lot of cheerleading competitions, and I've seen a lot of dance recitals. And I'm going to be there till I kick off, because that's my responsibility as a parent and grandparent. Right. It isn't just baseball. If it was, I'd be in Shaper City. But what are you going to do?
No, that's awesome. And like I said, hopefully, some of my listeners out there take heed to, some of the stuff we're saying, because it really does, it takes a village, and, it's okay to have people in that village that don't necessarily see things the same way.
Absolutely.
That you see them. Difference of perspective is very important. And I think that's something that we've lost today.
It's the truth. A guy retires from the minor leagues because he couldn't hit a ball in the butt with a snow shovel, or he couldn't throw it in the ocean from the beach. And now he's a former Met pitching guru. And it's like, parents, do your R&R, learn as much as you can yourself, and encourage your son to figure out what's good for him, rather than trust your entire career to someone you don't really know. There's more, and the information is available on the internet. The big thing is they want to go on the internet and become Mike Trout. Mike Trout became Mike Trout on a baseball field, not on the internet.
Right.
And he did something every day to become a better ball player, a better athlete. But that's my perspective. I think these guys are trying to rush, like what I saw the last year or two one area in particular here in Jersey has been producing a lot of 90-mile-an-hour kids and sophomores and juniors in high school. And everybody was all excited about it because they're throwing, cannonballs backwards and forwards and this, that, and the other thing. Well, I got as many guys that end up throwing 93 as they did. The difference is 9 guys last year from this small area had Tommy John.
Yeah.
Because your body isn't made to throw 95 when you're 15 years old.
Right.
And the connective tissue just does not keep up with the bone growth. And throwing those heavy balls turns a lot of kids' hands over too soon and causes an elbow big problem. And so be careful what you do. I still think that the old timer way of long tossing and throwing all the time with a regular ball is the best way to go. And the advantage the kids have nowadays is they have better pitching instruction.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody isn't satisfied with that. They got to win at 13 years old. So we got to, throw cannonballs or weighted balls and build up our arm. And they never rest their arm. They throw too much heavy stuff and not enough real baseballs. But that's just my opinion. No shortcuts.
Yeah. And I like what you talk about how each kid really has to develop what works for them.
Yep.
There really isn't a cookie cutter approach to this. You see a lot of these hitting instructors and
Yep.
pitching instructors who just have this same kind of cookie cutter approach to these kids. And that's just not the way it is. And,
Not good.
I'll equate to, back when I was still in sales, I would go to a bunch of different sales seminars, and every one of these guys, claimed that they had the recipe for success. But what I would do is I would take a nugget from each one of them to develop my own recipe for success. And I think that's what, kids really need to do. They need to look at, like, exactly
We're not
what you
allowing
said.
them to do it a lot of times.
You're right.
You got to allow them to do that. And when
Yep.
I work with a kid, first thing I say is try this and give me your feedback. And knowing that they won't, especially guys, I then say, you hate that. Why do you hate that? And then they'll tell me, well, I don't like that, Mr. B, because of this or that. If it's right for you, it'll feel right almost right away.
Right.
It may not feel right, but you get great results. Well, if I'm hitting bombs over the fence and I feel a little uncomfortable, I'll learn to live with that, right? But the thing is, there is no one way, and you own your swing or your pitching delivery, not me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a guide. I make suggestions, shoot them down if you don't like it, right? We're trying to find out what works for you. And like you said, there is no cookie cutter. In fact, I've had I've had hundreds of guys signed. I had over 200 major leaguers. We've had 50,000 kids nationwide go on the scholarships to college. I can't think of one great hitter or pitcher that wasn't an original. And sometimes his originality, his funky delivery or his long stride or his hiding the ball or his late movement made him successful. And if you change that, you're taking away what helped him get hitters out.
Right.
I mean, how many lefties have you and I lost to in big tournaments where you say to yourself, this guy can't break a pane of glass. And 7 innings later, I can't believe we're not hitting him. We're down 2-0 to this little lefty. It's like, it's because he's got something going for him that gets hitters out. And if you change him completely to cookie cut him, he'll never get anybody out. So that's a thing that the Joe Rileys and the old timers, Elmer Vallow scouts, they recognize that. I'm not sure these graduates of MIT with all their stats would even look at Whitey Ford now, or Eddie. Who's the Phillies had a little lefty. Just Jamie Moyer, Tommy John. They might not even get signed nowadays. Well, all they did was win, and so Bobby Shantz. It's important that we get back to teaching kids how to win, how to play small ball or do whatever they can do to win, rather than sit there and watch home run derby for 7 days in a playoff. 15 strikeouts and 2 home runs to decide the game. Seriously?
Yeah.
Tampa Bay a year ago couldn't field a lick, and they got away with it. I saw Boyertown Legion teams would outfield them any day of the week. All right.
Ain't that the
But
truth?
yeah. But they were well, they took a pitcher out with a no-hitter and lost the World Series, but they were in Game 7 and they couldn't field. If my teams couldn't field or your teams couldn't field, we wouldn't have won any tournaments. But
Exactly.
the Tampa Bay Rays won over 100 games 2 years ago, and they'll tell you they couldn't field that good. So baseball's changing. I'm trying to. I know I sound like a dinosaur a lot. My son says, back when dinosaurs roamed, Dad, get over it. But there's still so much to be learned from sports and from baseball that apply. And as old as I am, I try to learn stuff every single day about baseball. I watch tapes and videos. When everybody thinks they know what they're doing, and I see a product that I see, it's like, man, let's go back to the drawing board. It's not working, whatever you're doing, So right now I'm trying to, I'm trying to create YouTubes where you can tell me a hidden clue, and I'll show you an exception to that rule in the Hall of Fame. There is no one way to hit, So, but I watch a lot of tapes, and when you're trying to figure out why a guy's successful, you look at it a different way than when you're trying to find something that you can change. Sometimes the best thing you could say is, "Hey, I'm not changing you. How about you're a low ball hitter? How about starting swinging at low balls a little more often and lay off them high ones?" That's all Ted Williams did. He took the Washington Senators from the worst team in hitting in baseball to the best team in 1 year. In fact, 3 years in a row, they led the league in hitting and scoring runs and so forth. And he didn't change anybody's swing. He just changed their approach. Yeah. So you asked some good questions and brought up some really good subjects. And a lot of it applies to everything, Dan. Applies to work and corporate America, politics.
Yep, it sure does.
Things.
Yep, it sure does. I mean, they always say baseball is a metaphor for life, right? And I think that's one of the things that, guys like you and I really stressed to our players. And, I told you before we started recording, I mean, being able for me to get out and see some of these guys that moved away from our area has been so refreshing for me. So I want to ask you, and again, you coached many, many more players than I ever did, but when these guys come back and you reconnect with them, I mean, how important is it for you to see these guys, 10, 15, 20, 30 years after you coached them? I mean, what does that do for your soul?
It's awesome. As cool as watching some of these guys perform on TV. I've had so many doctors and lawyers and a few guys that are congressmen that turned out they're the only guys that didn't turn out great. Now, I've had judges, but my most famous worldwide alumni nobody's ever heard of, but he's a cardinal now, and he fed like 1 million people in Brazil between Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, turkey dinner. When he played for me, 1978, I cut him, and he cussed me up, down, and sideways. He said 12 guys showed up for the team, and 11 guys made it, and you posted on the bulletin board that I was cut. He said, "Why?" I said, "Michael, 5 days of tryouts, you're still ducking. You haven't caught one ball. You can't throw the ball 4 feet. You haven't hit a foul tip in 5 days of batting practice. You can't catch a ball. You run from it. And that's why I cut you." He said, "What do you expect? I never played baseball in my life. 15 years old. I supported my mother. I have no father. I take 2 jobs. All my friends are on the baseball team or at least trying out for it. And you had the audacity to cut me. And not only that, you put it up on the bulletin board. So after that, I never cut anybody on the bulletin board. And I said, okay, you're back on the team. And for the next 2 years, that boy, all he did was practice bunting. He could run a little bit. And we were in 2 state finals, and he was a factor in all of them.
Wow.
With his bunts and his pinch running. And he's won on, he became a bishop and a cardinal and so forth. But I have a lot of success stories. It's not just about baseball. It's,
right.
The Division III college coach of the year is one of my kids. He's been coaching for a long time. But we got guys in all walks of life that believe in loyalty, integrity, and commitment. And you asked me before we started some of the things that are important to me. I try to, my granddaughter says my jokes are horrendous, but I try to make somebody smile or laugh every day. I try to pick them up every day, right? I'm retired, so I don't have no bills. So I like to leave the Dunkin' Donuts girls or whomever smiling, so I tip them more than my coffee every day. And now they fight over serving them to me, but just pick people up. It's so negative right now. Mm-hmm. And the only advice I would give our players right now is I waited till I was 40 years old. I always wanted to be a high school coach and a baseball coach, teacher. And I let people talk me out of it and take accounting. And I went in the accounting business for 20 years. And I hated it. It's probably the worst job you could have. I found out when I was 40 that I had ADD. Being an accountant is probably the second worst job in the world for a guy with ADD.
Right.
Worst would probably have been air traffic controller. I could have wiped out the whole country in one day. But I went into baseball because I was forced to decide either you coach baseball or you continue to grow the accounting thing. So I gave the accounting office to my brother, walked out. I got it from my parents. I gave it to him. I walked out and I tried to do baseball. I was the first one to do baseball for a living, as far as I know, 1985 or something. But pick something you love, you have interest in, you wouldn't mind doing the rest of your life, and the money will come. If you're one of the 3% best in the world, you'll make plenty of money at doing it. If you're not, but you still love it, it's not like working.
No,
I used to work 50, 60 hours in accounting so I could do baseball across the Cadillac in Brooklyn for free. When I had a baseball academy, I didn't work. I haven't worked since 1985.
Yeah.
Right? All I did was baseball. And if that's the way you feel about fishing or accounting or the internet, something you like, try to pursue that as opposed to pursuing something that someone else wants you to do. And again, my wife, she's been 100% with me all the time, backs up everything I did. And likewise with my kids. Now it's my turn. So I'll be going to another cheerleading or dance contest this what do you call them? Dance perform rehearsal. Yeah, I'll be doing that every day this week, but that's the price. You got to show interest in your family.
Absolutely. That is great advice. I mean, they always say if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And I was the same way where, when I was finally able to, turn what I was doing into an actual vocation. I mean, I was doing the same thing, the first 20 years of the, Berkshire Baseball Organization. And then, later on the Big Vision Foundation was, volunteer work for me. And then the last 10 years of my tenure, it was actually a vocation. But like you said, I put in a lot of hours, but I never felt like I was actually working. So that is very sound advice. So we're just about out of time, but anything that we didn't cover before I get to my final question, which you really did already answer, but I'm going to make you answer it again.
No, that's basically it. It's a pleasure again talking baseball with you, Dan. And,
I love it. If we, when we get into the Jersey area, I'll look you up and I'll show
absolutely.
you the RV for sure.
Absolutely.
Because I absolutely loved getting together with you, and when you brought teams to our tournaments or whatever the case was. So when I got that email from you, it was a breath of fresh air. that you reached out. So I really do appreciate that. So, like I said, I am going to make you answer that final question again, just so it's all in one nugget. But the subtitle is "Many Little People in Many Little Places," which comes from the opening lyrics of a song, which go, "When many little people in many little places do many little things, and the whole world changes." So, once again, Joe, if you can just tell people what a couple of those little things are that you do on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place.
Well, I try to pick everybody up that I come across, shake hands with people, make them smile, compliment them. It's things are so negative sometimes. Everybody you come in touch with, you want to pick them up. And if everybody did that, we wouldn't have half the issues that we have. And the other thing is try to teach the kids to focus on what they like to do and treat everybody like they would wish to be treated. And it's sort of like a boomerang. The way you treat people will come back to you. So treat other people the way you want to be treated.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. That is great. Very sound advice. So, and then just one more time, Joe, if you can give the website for that coaching app that you have, so anybody out there listening can check that out again.
Baseballgoalbook.com.
Baseballgoalbook.com. Excellent.
All right. Thank you very much, Steve.
No problem. I appreciate it. For those out there listening, be sure to check out my blogs and other podcasts at danclouser.com. Joe, again, thanks so much for the time, and look forward to catching up with you when we get to Jersey.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.